Ryan Mitchell thought he had the perfect life, a beautiful wife and a promising future. But when Emily, his newlywed bride, revealed a secret so shocking, it turned their world upside down. What began as a love story ended in betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately, murder. In this chilling true crime documentary, uncover the twists and turns of a marriage that fell apart after one devastating revelation. Ryan had always considered himself a simple man, someone who found joy in the little things, his work, his friends, and the woman he had fallen in love with, Emily. When they met, it felt like destiny. They were both in their early 30s, and after a few dates, Ryan was convinced Emily was the one. She was kind, intelligent, and effortlessly beautiful. They quickly became inseparable, and Ryan was certain that she was everything he had been waiting for in a partner. Their relationship moved fast, but it didn't feel rushed. It felt right. Within 6 months, Ryan proposed, and within a year, they were married in a small ceremony surrounded by their closest family and friends. The honeymoon was everything Ryan had imagined it would be, relaxing and full of love. They went to a remote beach town where they spent their days walking along the shore, enjoying intimate dinners, and sharing dreams for the future. Life seemed perfect. Emily had the kind of warmth that made Ryan feel like he could conquer anything. They were living their dream, and to Ryan, it was a dream come true. Everything he had been looking for in life was finally within reach. But soon after returning home, things began to shift. It started with little things. A missed text message or a phone call that Emily seemed uncomfortable about. At first, Ryan didn't think much of it. People get busy, he thought, and it wasn't uncommon for someone to get caught up in their own world. But over time, these small incidents started to add up. Emily seemed distant, distracted, and Ryan's mind began to wander. He thought maybe she was struggling with the transition to married life, or perhaps she was still processing the whirlwind of the wedding and honeymoon. One evening, as they sat down to dinner, Ryan noticed a strange tension in the air. Emily seemed quieter than usual, and when he casually mentioned a trip they had been planning, she gave him an odd, half-hearted response. Her eyes briefly flicked toward the door as if she was eager to leave. Ryan felt a knot in his stomach, but he didn't press her. He assumed she just needed some space. After all, they were still figuring out how to live together day by day. But as the days turned into weeks, Ryan's sense of unease deepened. Emily seemed to pull away more and more. She spent long hours on her phone, often retreating to another room when Ryan entered. She had always been so open with him before, so this behavior felt alien. One evening, after they had gone to bed, Ryan noticed that Emily had left her phone on the nightstand. He tried not to snoop, but something gnawed at him, and without thinking, he reached for it. He scrolled through her messages, and the unease turned into full-blown suspicion. There were conversations with people he didn't know, people she had never mentioned before. There were even pictures of Emily, but not in the way Ryan was used to seeing her. He felt his chest tighten as his mind raced through a million questions. What was this? Why hadn't she told him about these people? Was there something more to Emily than he had known? The phone slipped from his hand as he heard the sound of footsteps approaching. Emily appeared in the doorway, her face pale as she saw Ryan holding the phone. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was thick, suffocating. Ryan's heart pounded in his chest, and for the first time in their relationship he felt afraid. Not of Emily, but of what he might uncover. He didn't know how to ask the questions swirling in his mind, but as Emily took a deep breath and walked toward him, he felt the weight of the moment press down on him. Something was wrong, and he was about to learn what it was. Ryan's mind was racing as Emily walked toward him. He couldn't focus on her face, only the phone in his hand and the secrets it had revealed. Emily stood still, watching him carefully, her eyes avoiding his as though she knew exactly what he had seen. The silence stretched between them, unbearable and heavy. Ryan's chest tightened, and his fingers gripped the phone tightly as though it might slip away, taking all the answers with it. "Emily, what is this?" His voice was barely above a whisper, the words struggling to break free from his throat. Emily closed her eyes for a moment as though steeling herself for something. Then she sat down beside him on the bed, her body tense. Ryan didn't take his eyes off her, searching for any sign that might explain the mystery. She looked down at her hands, her fingers twitching nervously. "I wanted to tell you," Emily began, her voice soft but filled with an edge of sadness. "But I didn't know how." Ryan's head was spinning. "Tell me what?" His heart was pounding so loudly in his ears that it was hard to hear her response. He could feel the weight of her unspoken words pressing down on him. She took a deep breath, her eyes welling with tears. "Ryan, I'm not who you think I am." She paused, as if waiting for him to understand something unsaid, something hidden deep beneath the surface of her words. "I'm transgender." Ryan blinked, trying to make sense of what she had just said. The words felt foreign, disconnected from the reality he had known. He had married Emily, a woman. The woman he had fallen in love with, the woman who had stood beside him on their wedding day, was suddenly someone he didn't fully understand. His mind fought to reconcile the information, but all he could feel was confusion. His grip on the phone loosened, and it fell onto the bed with a soft thud. Emily, sensing his shock, reached out to touch his hand, but Ryan pulled away instinctively. The room seemed to close in on him as 1,000 thoughts raced through his mind, none of them making sense. "I didn't want you to find out like this," Emily said quietly, her voice trembling. "I wanted to be honest with you, but I wasn't ready, and I thought maybe we'd have more time to figure things out." Ryan shook his head slowly, trying to process what he had just heard. "More time?" he repeated, his voice tinged with disbelief. "You've been hiding this from me? For how long, Emily?" "I never wanted to hurt you," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought maybe you wouldn't accept me and I didn't know how to tell you. But it's who I am, and I've been trying to live authentically for so long. I didn't want to lie to you, Ryan. I thought if I waited long enough, I could find the right time to explain." The words hung in the air, heavy and uncomfortable. Ryan's mind was spinning. He had always known Emily as a woman, someone who had seemed so natural in her identity, someone he had shared his life with in such an intimate way. The truth, this truth, was jarring. He felt like the ground beneath him had shifted, and he was struggling to find his balance. "I don't know what to say," Ryan muttered, his voice shaking. His thoughts were all over the place. He wanted to be supportive, to understand her pain and what she had been going through, but he couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. He felt angry, confused, and helpless. "Why didn't you tell me before we got married?" Emily's face fell. "I was scared. I thought you might not love me anymore. I thought you might leave me. And I didn't want to lose you." Ryan stared at her, the reality of their situation crashing down on him. He felt a deep sadness in his chest, but it was mixed with frustration and anger. He didn't know how to process all of this at once. He had trusted Emily, loved her with all his heart, and now he felt like he was drowning in a sea of questions and emotions he wasn't prepared to face. "I don't know if I can do this," Ryan finally said, his voice breaking. He wasn't sure if he was talking about their marriage, their future, or his own inability to understand what had just been revealed to him. Emily looked at him with eyes full of regret, but Ryan couldn't bring himself to comfort her. His emotions were too raw, too conflicted. For hours they sat in silence, Ryan didn't know what to say or how to move forward. The love he had once felt for Emily was still there, but it was now tainted with confusion and hurt. He had no idea how to navigate this new reality, and the distance between them felt insurmountable. The night wore on, and as Ryan lay awake in bed staring at the ceiling, a flood of emotions overwhelmed him. He wondered how things could have gone so wrong, how the woman he loved could have kept such a monumental secret. He couldn't help but wonder if this was the beginning of the end for them, or if somehow, through time and effort, they could find a way back to each other. But deep down, Ryan knew things would never be the same again. The life he had known had changed forever, and he wasn't sure he was ready to face the truth of it all. In the days that followed, Ryan found himself adrift. The world that had once felt so secure, so full of love and certainty, had been torn apart. Every conversation, every glance with Emily seemed to carry a weight he couldn't bear. He didn't know how to face her, how to navigate the flood of conflicting emotions that overtook him. The more he thought about the revelation, the more it confused him. On one hand, he wanted to be supportive to understand Emily's journey, but on the other, he felt betrayed. Betrayed by her secrecy, by the time they had lost, by the fact that this huge part of her identity had been kept hidden from him for so long. Emily, for her part, seemed to be in turmoil as well. She wanted to comfort him, to explain herself, to make him understand how difficult this had been for her. She had hoped for a time when they could be completely honest, when they could both come to terms with her past and her true identity. But now she saw the distance in Ryan's eyes. The warmth that had once been so evident in their relationship was fading, replaced by uncertainty. Emily couldn't deny that she had kept a part of herself hidden, but the fear of rejection had kept her from sharing her truth earlier. She had hoped that Ryan's love for her would be enough to bridge the gap between who she had been and who she was now. But now she wondered if it ever could be. Ryan spent most of his days in a daze, throwing himself into work just to avoid thinking about his personal life. He was consumed by the idea of betrayal. He wondered what else Emily had hidden from him. How could someone he loved so deeply have kept something this monumental from him? He questioned every moment of their relationship, wondering if everything had been a lie. Was their love even real? Or was it just built on an illusion? Despite his anger and confusion, Ryan couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. He had never wanted to hurt Emily. He loved her, or at least he thought he did. The emotions were so tangled inside him, and no matter how hard he tried to make sense of them, nothing felt clear. He missed the woman he had married, the woman he thought he knew, the confident, happy woman who had stood by him at the altar. But now, all he saw was a stranger. A woman who had held onto secrets, a woman whose past seemed to stretch farther than he could comprehend. Emily tried everything she could think of to bridge the gap. She reached out to a therapist, hoping to find a way to rebuild the trust they had lost. She asked Ryan to go with her, to help heal the wounds between them. But Ryan resisted. The thought of going to therapy, of confronting the feelings that were eating away at him, felt impossible. Instead, he drowned himself in work. Each day passed in a blur of legal jargon and meetings, and every evening he came home to a house that now felt hollow, empty of the warmth it once had. Emily wasn't giving up, though. She continued to reach out, trying to reassure him that their marriage wasn't a lie. She was determined to prove to Ryan that she had always loved him, that her being transgender didn't change the core of who she was. She begged him to talk to her, to try to understand. But the more she pushed, the more Ryan pulled away. The wedge between them grew deeper. Ryan didn't know how much longer he could live like this. He was torn between his love for Emily and his deep sense of betrayal. The conflict was eating away at him, and he couldn't escape it. Every time he looked at her, he saw the woman who had kept something huge from him, a woman who had broken his trust. But beneath that, he still saw the woman he had married. The woman who had made him laugh. The woman who had made him feel alive. But could he ever see her the same way again? The silence between them grew louder with each passing day. Ryan wanted answers, but he didn't know what questions to ask. He felt like he was walking through fog, unable to find a clear path forward. He didn't know where he was headed, and even more frightening, he wasn't sure if Emily and he would ever find their way back to each other. Time seemed to stretch endlessly before him, each moment filled with a quiet desperation that neither of them knew how to silence. Emily couldn't understand why Ryan couldn't accept her, but she also feared that in time, he might never be able to. The once vibrant love they had shared now seemed to hang by a thread, fragile and uncertain. She didn't know how to fix it, how to turn back the clock, how to make Ryan see that her love for him had never wavered, even after all these years of hiding behind the walls of her own fear. And so, the days passed, and the distance between them grew further, leaving them both wondering if their marriage, their future, had any hope at all. As the weeks went by, the tension in the house became almost unbearable. Emily could feel it every time she walked into a room, every time she caught Ryan looking at her with a mixture of confusion and disbelief. She tried so hard to hold on to the love they once shared, but the more she reached out, the more Ryan seemed to pull away. It was as though their connection, once so strong and certain, had unraveled, thread by thread, and no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't seem to stitch it back together. Ryan's internal conflict only deepened. There were moments when he caught himself missing the easy way they used to be, when things felt simple and full of promise. He thought about the life they could have had, the plans they had made, but each time he allowed himself to go down that path, he was flooded with questions. Was Emily really the person he thought she was? Could he ever look at her without the shadow of doubt clouding his vision? Was it possible to love someone in such a complicated way? His mind was a whirlwind of unanswered questions, and no matter how much he tried to push them aside, they always found a way to resurface. One night, as they sat in their living room, Emily tried once more to reach out. She had been attending therapy sessions on her own, trying to work through the emotional baggage that had built up over the years. She had hoped it might help her make sense of the fear and shame she had carried for so long. Maybe she thought if Ryan could see how much she was trying, he would start to understand that she was not just hiding a secret from him. She was struggling with a part of herself that she had never been able to share with anyone. She wanted him to see that she was still the same woman he had married, but with more layers, more depth. She needed him to see beyond the surface, beyond her past, and understand her present. "Ryan, please," Emily said softly, her voice trembling with emotion. "I need you to understand. This isn't something I wanted to hide from you. I never wanted to hurt you. But this is who I am, and I've been living with this for so long that I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to make you see me as I am now." Ryan didn't answer immediately. He had been staring at the floor, his face etched with frustration and confusion. Emily waited, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew this was the moment where everything could either fall apart completely or just maybe, they could find a way forward. But as the seconds stretched into minutes, she saw something in Ryan's eyes. It wasn't anger, but something else, something darker, more dangerous. She felt a chill run down her spine. Ryan stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I don't know what to say to you, Emily," he muttered, his voice low and tight. "I don't know how to look at you anymore. I don't know how to see you as the woman I married." Emily's breath caught in her throat. Her heart broke all over again, this time with a new kind of pain, the pain of realization. She had spent so many years living in fear, thinking that Ryan might one day leave her. But now that fear had turned into something else, it was clear now that no matter how much she tried, No matter how much she loved him, there was no going back. The foundation of their relationship had been cracked beyond repair. Ryan turned and walked away, heading for the door. Emily didn't try to stop him this time. She knew it was pointless. He had made up his mind. She sat there in the stillness, feeling a numbness settle over her. She couldn't believe this was happening. This wasn't the future she had imagined for herself, for them. But it was the reality she now faced. In the days that followed, Emily withdrew into herself. She stopped trying to reach out to Ryan, stopped attempting to mend the broken pieces. She knew it was futile. Ryan had made it clear that he couldn't accept her. And with that rejection, Emily realized something deep inside her. No matter how much she loved him, no matter how much she wanted to make it work, she couldn't keep sacrificing herself for someone who couldn't see her for who she truly was. Ryan, on the other hand, continued to struggle with his emotions. He would spend long hours walking aimlessly, trying to clear his head, but it felt as though there was no clarity to be found. Emily's words echoed in his mind, but each time he tried to reconcile them with the person he thought he knew, the more confused he became. He didn't know if he was angry, hurt, or just terrified of what the truth meant for his life. All he knew was that he couldn't escape the suffocating feeling of betrayal, and with each passing day, it seemed to consume him a little more. Neither of them knew it, but they were both standing at a crossroads. The path they were on was leading them further apart, and there was no easy way back. Emily had done everything she could to bridge the gap, but the more she tried, the more she realized that Ryan wasn't the same man she had married. He was someone else now, someone she didn't recognize. And as for Ryan, he was trapped in his own mind, caught between the love he once had for Emily and the painful reality of what he had just learned. Neither knew what the future held, but one thing was certain. They were both heading down a path that would change their lives forever. The days turned into weeks, and still neither of them had the answers they desperately sought. Emily spent her nights staring at the ceiling, lost in the silence of the house they had once shared so joyfully. It felt like a lifetime ago. Now, each day was a reminder of everything that had gone wrong. The man she loved, the man she had trusted with everything, had pulled away, and no matter how much she tried to bridge the gap, it only seemed to grow wider. She had expected resistance, of course. She had known it wouldn't be easy for Ryan to accept her truth, but she had hoped, at the very least, they could work through it together. But now that hope seemed like a distant dream. Ryan, meanwhile, was still living in a haze of confusion. Each night when he lay down to sleep, he would replay every moment with Emily, trying to piece together what had gone wrong. The memories of their happy days together felt like fragments of a life he no longer recognized. How could he have missed it? How could he have been so blind? All those times he thought he understood her. He thought he knew her better than anyone. How could it have all been based on an illusion? But then, a part of him knew this wasn't her fault. Emily hadn't chosen this, hadn't asked for this life. She hadn't asked to be born into a body that didn't match who she truly was. But the feelings of betrayal were overwhelming. He didn't know how to reconcile the love he had for her with the feelings of hurt and confusion that kept surfacing. The strain on their relationship was palpable. Neither of them knew what to do next. Emily wanted to leave, but she couldn't bring herself to walk away from everything she had ever wanted. Ryan, their life together. Yet she knew, deep down, that staying would only hurt them both more. She couldn't continue to live in this limbo, trapped in a marriage that felt like it was slowly crumbling away. And Ryan, though he still loved her in his own way, knew that their marriage, as it stood, was no longer the same. He was lost. The emotional weight of everything they had been through was suffocating him, and every day felt like he was suffocating too. On a cold evening, Ryan finally came to a decision. He had been walking through life for weeks, barely keeping his head above water, But now he could no longer avoid the inevitable. He needed closure. He needed to understand whether their love was something worth salvaging or if it was truly gone. It wasn't fair to either of them to keep going on like this, pretending that things would magically get better when they both knew deep down that they wouldn't. He called Emily into the living room. She sat on the couch, her face tired, her eyes empty, but she didn't speak. Ryan took a deep breath, his heart pounding as he stared at her. "Emily, I need to know if we can fix this. If you still want this." She met his gaze, her face pale, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. "I do," she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. She had been saying that for weeks, hoping that someday, somehow, they would find a way back to the life they had shared. But now there was nothing but a cold emptiness where their once happy future had been. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, frustration creeping up inside him. "I don't know, Emily. I just don't know how we can fix this. I can't pretend it's all okay when it's not. I feel like I don't know you anymore. Everything I thought I knew about it, it's all in question." Emily's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't speak. The pain in her chest was unbearable. She wanted to scream, to tell him that she had always been the same person, that she was still the woman he had married. But the words wouldn't come. She felt as though she had already said everything there was to say, and none of it had been enough. "I'm sorry, Emily," Ryan whispered, his voice breaking as he stood up. "I can't keep living in this uncertainty. I need time. I need space to figure out who I am in all of this." Emily stood up too, tears streaming down her face as she tried to hold on to the last bit of hope she had. "What does that mean?" she asked softly. "What does that mean for us?" Ryan looked at her one last time, his face etched with pain and confusion. "I don't know. I don't know anymore." And with that, he walked out of the room, leaving Emily standing there, frozen in place. The finality of it hit her all at once, a heavy weight crashing down on her shoulders. She knew what had just happened, knew that the love they once shared might never be enough to bridge the chasm between them. That night, Emily packed a small bag and left the house, not knowing where she was going, but feeling like she needed to get away. She couldn't stay there, not in the place where every corner held memories of a love that now seemed lost. Ryan stayed behind, torn between what he thought he should do and what he truly wanted. Neither of them knew what the future held, but one thing was certain: they were no longer the couple they had once been. The truth had shattered everything, and there was no way of knowing if they would ever be able to pick up the pieces.